am Dr. Christy Taylor, founder of Work Solutions LLC and Work Global News Magazine, and I am so excited to bring you another Changemaker interview and one of our featured speakers from the Prescription for Career Success Summit. Laurie McGinley is the founder of Via Lucid. She helps peak performers like you break free from autopilot and unlock smarter instincts, sharper responses, and better results, all without more homework or a new to-do list. So if you're tuning in, whether you're on Work Global News or you're tuning in and getting ready for the conference, Laurie is going to be really exciting to talk to her because I always have a to-do list. So, hey, Laurie, how you doing? I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself because I definitely can learn from you and very excited to have you on.
Christy, I'm doing really well, and I want to thank you profoundly for having me on here to have this conversation. I love talking about this. And honestly, the reason that I founded Via Lucid is because I see the need. I've been surrounded by peak performers my whole life. I was a Division I athlete. I was the salutatorian. I was the honor student. I, did all the things. And I've been in communities of peak performers. And what I've seen and noticed for 35 years, I decided to pour into Via Lucid because it's the peak performers learning a new way to break through, to break out of autopilot that really moves the needles on big dreams. And really it helps you feel better too.
Yeah, because I am one of those people, and I even admittedly a coach, as we go through all the standard coaching process, make a to-do list, here's your homework. So this will be a break from what other people are hearing and tuning into. You got a different thought process. So you have worked in such diverse fields, like you said, you're an athlete, you work in fields like architecture, manufacturing, and web design. How have these experiences really influenced your approach to transformation?
Well, Christy, at the time that I was moving around through all of those different fields, I've also, by the way, I've been a contractor. I owned a company when I was 20 years old and had 12 employees. And I didn't know this at the time, but what I was really doing was practicing my ability to transform my own life. These fields are really different. They require different practical skills. They require different cultural skills. They require you to understand and be around beliefs and values that are very different than yours. And what I was doing throughout my career and hopping careers so much was really sharpening all of those tools of being able to nimbly change. So I'm not using really any of the tactical skills that I learned in manufacturing and architecture and construction, but it was all of the transformation skills that I honed along the way that I use every time I talk to a world changer.
Well, you know me, I like to say that because everybody's like, well, what is, you spell your business WORXK? Well, it's work. Okay. It's work. That RX is prescription for change. Hence the Prescription for Career Success Summit, right? Now you'll hear me bring it up, but this is not about the summit. This is all about you. And one of the things as a coach, we always talk about is, the career coach standard language. I'm going to do the career coach standard language, right? Because you have to have transferable skills. And so when you talk about, you kind of have gone from the word transferable skills to like use of the word transformative. And I love that. Now, when you talk about your journey and your experience, what do you believe is like the biggest barrier world changers face? And how do you guide them through it? Because I really just love the fact that you focus on world changers and people of impact because we are in direct alignment, right? Yep. So how do you support those individuals?
Christy, I love this question. And some characteristics that I see in world changers. We're not all the same people, but we all have some big characteristics. We're the kind of people who we're never going to call the game. World changers don't quit, we pivot. World changers give it our all. A lot of world changers come in with wild activists, very passionate hearts, and they bring every ounce of themselves to it. And when we do that, in a way, that's a recipe for burnout. And I don't know if you know this, but the burnout in the world that I work in corporate, in sustainability leadership, the burnout rate is way higher than it is in other fields. And I think that's because people are really ambitious, they're really smart, and they bring all of themselves. So what do I see? What's the biggest barrier? People bringing all of themselves and leaving it all on the table. We were all trained to do that. I just told you I was a Division I athlete. I was literally trained to leave it all out on the track or out on the field, right? When we do that year after year, decade after decade, we become burnout machines. So the biggest barrier that I see, honestly, is finding wellness, making wellness a priority, and weaving wellness into your achievement strategy. And I think that's one thing that world changers tend to leave out of their strategy because it's never seemed like it helped. It seemed like it was something that was holding us back. And what I guide people through is how it's not an extra thing to add to your to-do list. It's the thing that allows you to do what you're here to do.
You say world changers. I use the term social impactors. It's all the same, right? I literally, the reason why I had to make the pivot in my own business because I was focused on the healthcare sector, and I was like, no, I want to be a greater social impact, and so that began to encompass supporting career advising for social impact leaders, people who are working in the sustainability sector like yourself, folks who are doing healthcare and teaching and just and to this day, that's what I've made that commitment to be. You talk about burnout, and I want to stay just a second there because the term that was brought to my attention when it comes to burnout for people who are world changers, social impactors, is passion fatigue. And it is so different for us that work in this space because it's one thing to burn out because you people get tired on the job. You are you're overworked and overcommitted. But I want you to just kind of share some perspective on this, where you agree or disagree that when we talk about passion fatigue and this concept of world changes and social impacts, it is more so the burnout is also directly associated because you're doing heart-centered work. And I think you really just pointed out. What are your thoughts on that?
Christy, you and I are in deep alignment about this. I've never heard the term passion fatigue, but that is absolutely it. I talk a lot about people bringing their wild activist hearts to work, and especially my clients who are corporate sustainability officers. They work in a world where they got to kind of toe the line and wear the mask, but they go in there as activists. And so not only are they're bringing all of this passion to it, but they know how to play the game. They know how to fit in. They know how to move the needle in the corporate appropriate way. And when we talk about passion fatigue or burnout, what it really is there's a belief of people when they first hire me that they believe if they are just stronger, or if they can just endure longer, or if they can just go the extra mile or work the extra hour, then the initiative will go through. And when you believe that, and the initiative doesn't go through over and over and over and over and over again, that job starts to feel like a doom loop, right? And then you start to get that fatigue, then you start to get that burnout, and this job that you love that fits you like a glove, you start getting to the point where it's hard to get out of bed to go to it. You always had energy reserves, and now the tank is just like really low. It starts to feel impossible to go back to this thing that you actually love. That's the passion fatigue. Absolutely. That's the precursor to burnout. And that's where I meet a lot of people on this journey.
Yeah, I 100% agree. When I first started in my previous role, I was thinking about how I met so many amazing people who were doing work all around the world in impact. And although I'm very limited on what I can say publicly, what I was surprised was they talked about that we had a relaxation room. You can kind of go to defrag a little bit, right? But that was actually like a room people would go and cry because they would be so passionate about the work that they were doing that if it didn't go through, they couldn't help who they would want to help you, it was nothing to see them shedding tears because they were just so connected to their work, doing impactful work. And so it really just resonates with me what you are saying, because it is heart-centered work. People go, and I like to say, I wouldn't say for me that I'm an activist, but I'm definitely an advocate, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I definitely play the corporate role, but I have to find that balance. But in our own little way, we all have things that we do as an activist of sort, right? But yeah, I definitely resonate with what you're saying. Now, I want you to share a moment in your life when you had to overcome a significant, because it's one thing to talk about, what we do as coaches, right? But I think the best connections that coaches make with people is when they share personal experience. So can you share a moment in your life when you had to overcome a significant personal or professional barrier and how it transformed you?
Christy, I've got a juicy one for you. I've never shared this publicly before. Only few people in my life have ever heard this story before. So the first time I burned out, I was 31 years old. I had a stroke at work. I'm okay. I went home and slept in my bed that night. It was a minor stroke, but I did have a visit to the ER. The second time I burned out was 7 years later. I was 38 years old. And the event that woke me up I brought my whole heart to that job. That job, Christy, was designed for me. It fit me like a glove. It needed somebody who had had this vast experience in architecture and construction and design and product development and project management. And it was doing something that I was very, very, very passionate about and I knew would save the world. So there was an event at that job where I had been hired to answer a question. And it took a couple months to get the answer together. It was a big, complex, data-driven question. And it was my time at the executive meeting to deliver the answer. And I stood up and I delivered the answer and it was clear. And it was not what the leadership team was ready to hear. They were heavily personally, financially invested. They were heavily emotionally invested. And my answer took them here. And they thought we were going here. And they had a big, passionate response. And it totally shut down. It was the literal straw that broke the camel's back. I was running so thin at that point. I wasn't even aware how thin I was running. I just felt like I was living my life. And it was in that moment with their passionate response that the whole world crumbled. And Christy, I fell apart. After that, for weeks, months after that, I had a hard time getting out of bed to go to this job that I loved. I wasn't a very good wife. I wasn't a very good mom. I wasn't a very good me. I wasn't even a good neighbor. I live in Minnesota. I wasn't even shoveling my neighbor's sidewalks. We do that for each other, right? So it was that wake up call for me that felt really vulnerable and soul crushing, where I had to say, I can't fix this by myself. Mm-hmm. And it was like I said, world changers don't quit. We pivot. And I knew a pivot was coming, but it was like, I got to stop pivoting. I got to fix this. This feels broken. Something's wrong. And I had to let go of that job that was designed for me that I loved. And I had to take a step back and really reevaluate. And that started, honestly, a 5-year process of reevaluation for me. It took a long time to answer that question. I need help. Where am I going to get it? It was a very vulnerable time for me. And it's not a resume item that I would ever put up on my resume or on LinkedIn, but it is, looking back, that pivotal moment when I went from being somebody who was just going to keep trying and burning out to somebody who was going to figure out how to succeed and leave burnout in the dust.
Look, I feel like we're soul sisters in a form of life, because this is my story 5 years ago in terms of how I ended up in DC. But same thing, found myself, and I'm literally writing a book about it now. This career that you're so passionate about. I don't know if you worked in the spaces where there are a limited amount of resources, but when I'm working in spaces like, nonprofit, educate, oh my God, we have a limited amount of resources. Plus, we're still trying to save the world. In this piece, I had put myself almost exact same situation as you, and having to tell people answers they didn't want to hear. And guess what? At 37, I found myself just kind of mentally walking away from my job, leaving my home, moving back in with my mama and going to therapy, and could not figure out for the life of me how I had this fantastic career, but now I'm sitting at home on my mama's couch crying and going to therapy. Because
Isn't it confusing, Christy? Isn't it confusing?
Yes. And you don't want to share it with anybody because it's feelings of shame. But I tell you what, it makes you who you are as a coach. Because when I got up off of that, I think it took about 5 therapy sessions, and I was like, why did I allow that to happen? You know what I mean? Like, never again. And that literally made me pivot in my business and how I coach, because I'm like, I am for resilient workplaces. I am for helping people who work in social impact to become whole, because you can't, we go into it with so much passion and dedication. It doesn't, and you have to realize too that these environments are also political environments. They work like any other corporate organization. So when you're telling people things they don't want to hear, it can be a challenge. So I am sure, while that story is horrible, that it shaped you into the coach that you are today.
It's who I am today. Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to be clear, the emotional reaction they had, they were bringing their whole heart to work too. Right? I don't fault them for that. I totally understand why it was a big response. But it was just that moment that was that wake up call. And I mean it. It felt like this. It was like, that's all it took. I was so fragile and rigid at that point, because I'd been towing the line. I'd been draining my own battery for so long and bringing so much of myself to it in the name of achievement and accomplishment that it just took this little, and that was it.
And I just think, how can I say this strategically? If you are listening to this right now and you are a social impactor or a world changer, and you know that you brought everything that you had and left it all on the field, right? It's okay to be in a position to take a moment to self-reflect and to look at those transferable or transformational skills that you have and pivot, right? And because the world, the universe still has great things for you. I mean, look at where Laurie is right now today, transforming the lives of people. Now, this has really been a great conversation so far, and I just want to get back to, you shared this moment, and one of the things I want you guys to take from this interview is that everybody's human. Even those of us out here doing great, trying to do great work and impactful work, we have our moments, because what would make Laurie the coach that she is if she didn't have a moment that she can actually share and connect on a human level. Now that you've been through all of that, and I'm pretty sure at points of time still go through it, you describe yourself as a transformation guide, right? Not a coach.
Not a coach.
So how does your approach differ from traditional coaching?
So I've never gone to any sort of training to get certified as any sort of coach before. I have been through coaching with somebody who had gone through training and have experienced what that was like with him. And it was very structured. And he did give me homework. There were worksheets. I'm not kidding about this. And at the time when I was working with him, Christy, it was just what I needed. It was exactly what I needed. I needed a change. Mm-hmm. He was the right support with the right supportive materials for me to make a change. I say transformation guide for a couple of reasons. Number one, everybody has to self-select into transformation. I can show you the path, but you got it. I'm going to describe it to you, and you got to walk it. The other reason with this is picking English apart a little bit, I see a big difference between change and transformation. Change was what I did with that first coach. I needed a little bit of a adjustment to get out of where I was. Transformation for me is people hire me almost always. There's a challenge at work or a challenge in fundraising, or there's like a tactical thing that they want to get through. And we end up talking about every corner of their life. Yep. What I love supporting people through and guiding people through is the transformation, because what I really want to teach you is how to notice what in your life is not serving you anymore, how to just become aware of it. I want to teach you how to resource yourself until that becomes autopilot. And then I want to show you an entirely new way to operate your life that feels good, that gets you bigger results than you've ever gotten before. And it makes dogs want to walk up to you wagging their tails, and they don't even know why, because you're just like a nicer, happier, more loving, better person. And it does. I mean this when I say it. It really does. If you let it, it'll impact every single corner of your life.
And this is one of those interviews that as I listen into you, not only do we kind of have like parallel, but I'm also learning from you, right? And I just love your description. Now, I'm still going to be a career coach, but
Christy, and I'm going to do me.
But I love that, because I do say, like, I focus on mindset transformation, because I don't know if you have experienced this in the process of your work, but when people, and I kind of hear it in your answer here, but when people come to you, right, it's always an initial ask, but it's never what the issue really is. Like, clients come to me, career coaches can be very transactional. Hey, Dr. Taylor, I need a resume, and then once I get to listening to, to them, this is why I had to integrate the mindset transformation piece, because it's always like I can do 1,000 things for you, but until you get off the hamster wheel of whatever it is that you're on, you're not gonna find what you're looking for, right? So
you and I are on the same page. You're listening between the words just like I am.
Yeah. It's never, because I just heard you say, like, you'll be called in for one thing, and then you get to talking to them, and you start talking about family and all these other dynamics, right? And you really get to the root cause of the things that are impacting their life.
And again, really the foundation of what I'm guiding people through with my whole heart. When you're done working with me, I want you to know how to keep transforming. Mm-hmm. As humans, that's a good life, to know, to recognize what's ready to let go, and to learn what you're ready to bring on that serves you better.
I love that. What advice would you give someone to someone who feels stuck in autopilot, but they're afraid to make that change?
The first thing I would say is, with my whole heart, congratulations, you're human. It is human nature to crave the known. We evolved to crave the predictable environments that we're used to. It is the gift we received from our ancestors. It's why we're alive. And anyone who's ready to get out of autopilot familiar and into something that they really don't know what's coming, you are going against evolution. So the first thing I would say is congratulations, you're human. And I would say that with my whole heart, hoping that you feel that you are not alone, you are not broken, you are not weak. And if you really are ready for this, you're going to have to be intentional about it. Because it gets uncomfortable the minute you change.
I love that because it kind of goes back to what I just said about being on the hamster wheel, right? People, you know what I'm saying? Until you are ready, there's a in health science, there's a the theoretical theory of change. It's like what they use for the trans theoretical theory of change is what they use in AA for like Alcoholic Anonymous, right? That's where that theory was actually applicable for, because it's what it's saying is that until a person is ready to change, they're not going to change. And you can try to run 1,000 interventions, but because it's really related to like drug addiction, right? You can run 1,000 interventions, you can do 1,000 different things, but until that person, that's why not that we're here to talk about health science, but that's why you have programs like needle, programs and all, because until a person is ready to change, they're not. But that really is so applicable to this.
But Christy, if I may, there's a piece of this I can't let go of that you're talking about. Yeah. So the one thing I am trained and licensed in is to deliver a neuroscience-based model of change. And I'm going to draw from that for a second. All of us, every single one of us, becomes conditioned to the emotions that we feel every day. Another way to say that same thing is we become neurochemically addicted to the emotions that we feel, because our emotions are chemicals, right? They're hormones in our body. And so your cell, if it receives the same chemical day after day after day, hour after hour, it wants that. And so when we're talking about recovery addiction programs and we're talking about humans transforming, we're kind of talking about the same thing here. The moment you dramatically change your set of emotions that you're receiving, that you're producing for yourself every day, that your receptor sites are receiving, it's going to feel weird because you're starting the withdrawal process. And one of the things I tell people all the time is I was a very rageful, angry person for 35 years, and I was masking it. Even the people in my life might not have known just how rageful I was underneath. Now, it's been years since that's been my daily cocktail of emotions, and I will always be in recovery from that. It feels like a sleeping dragon that when it sniffs out an opportunity that it might get to rise, it shakes all the sand off and it wants to come play. And it's my job in recovery from rage to be like, no, because I'm not going back there. I came at it with conviction and I'm staying at it with conviction. I'm not living that life anymore. That's what ended me with a stroke at 31. I don't want that life.
Exactly. Choosing quality over quantity. But I just love that connection there, right? Because it is like a drug addiction. It's like it's hard to give up. You become comfortable with that emotion or that thing that you're dependent on. Oh, wow. I could go another 25 minutes with just that alone. But we got to move ahead. So looking ahead, speaking of looking ahead, you have a lot of exciting plans for Via Lucent. And what are you most excited about? And how do you see these initiatives impacting your audience? And I just want to plug there that I'm excited about the fact that this is not the last time we're going to be interviewing with each other, because we're doing a book together. So I'm really excited about that. So what do you have? What are your plans here for 2025?
Oh, 2025 is a big year for Via Lucent. So I have a book that just came back from the editor yesterday. We're targeting an April 15th launch for that. And the book is intended to be for my audience. I talk to a lot of folks who aren't quite ready for a live program. And the book is intended to be a way for them to kind of get started or understand when they're started. So the initiative was to impact more people with greater ease. Excuse me. I also have an online course that's launching probably within about 10 days here. It's another way for people to engage with what I guide people through without having to sign up for a live offering. And another thing that's very exciting, I'm going to be on a lot of stages. So I'm so happy for the opportunity to get to continue connect on your stage. I'm also going to be at South by Southwest, at EarthX, right before I come and see you. And there's just more speaking coming, more talking to people about books, more online offerings, and of course, continuing to do the live stuff that I have been doing for the last 5 years.
Well, we're going to make sure that, when we launch the actual event that you're plugging that book, and then I have to look at our editorial schedule, but we're going to make sure that we have links for your course and all of that stuff, good stuff in the description for whenever this drops. So, hey, I'm excited. Hey, so tell us a little bit about what you're going to be, just like 30 seconds on what you're going to be speaking about at the Prescription for Success summit?
So I'm so happy I get to give my favorite keynote at the summit. And the keynote is called Gravitas is for Everyone. And I know it's a weird word, and I ask people all the time what it means, and it's become a funny game. Don't worry about that too much. The reason I love giving this keynote is it's a call to action. It's a call to action for you to look around in your life and examine, where am I showing up and I don't belong? Where am I getting in my own way because I'm just in the habit of not belonging here? And what would it take to shift into belonging? And I promise you, I've led hundreds of people through this. When you decide, when you declare with a sovereign right that you belong where you are, you will see things you've never seen. You will hear things you couldn't hear before, and you'll be able to make decisions and take actions that you've never even thought were possible. And that is literally how you get bigger and better results. And by the way, when you belong there, you're going to feel better the whole time and when you're done.
Well, I'll definitely, well, not just because I'm the host, but I will definitely be there taking notes because I want to learn. I think, as a coach, I have to be continuously learning myself. And I'm telling you, in that standard, I think I got 36 notebooks just in this room from, I don't even know how to function without a notebook and list and a checklist because I have to. Sometimes I'll do it and then write it on the checklist and then cross it off just to make myself feel good like it's done. All right, listen, this has been a fantastic interview, Laurie. I'm really looking forward to continue to work with you. So just give us one last piece of advice that you want to give to the next generation of world changers, whether somebody's tuning in today, tomorrow, next week, or 10 years from now, because I know that we're going to be continue to be a global news channel, right? What advice would you want to give them, and how can people find you today?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the easy one. You can find me at vialucent.com. Everything that I put out, that's the hub of where it all is. And I love this question because I was just having this conversation with my 20-year-old nephew. He's a very ambitious person academically, and he's an athlete as well, a collegiate athlete. And he was talking about racing skiing at altitude that's higher than what he's used to and how awful it was. And we flipped this into his ambitions in his studies and his ambitions in his career. And here's the one piece of advice, and I really hope that you hung on to hear this one. If you have been trained to feel frustrated and endure longer than your peers in order to succeed, you do not have to keep living like this. If you're feeling frustrated and choosing to endure, that has a ceiling. You will hit it eventually. People hit it at different ages. When you can shift into enjoying what you're doing instead of enduring what you're doing, watch out, world. You're going to hit the stratosphere.
Well, I would like to just say thank you, not only for this cool interview, but also for introducing me to this new word, gravitas. I don't know where I'm going to use it today. I might just go to Starbucks and stand there and go, yes, gravitas.
When they ask you your name, say, make that latte for gravitas.
Gravitas. Yes, I'm so excited, Laurie, to keep on. I will collaborate with you, and thank you for dropping in today and sharing your wisdom and experiences with us. I'm sure it resonates with people on so many levels because people need to see the human side of the work that we do and how we got to where we are. So again, thanks for tuning in today, guys, and stay tuned. More to come from Work Global News. Any final words, Laurie?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This has been a delightful conversation, and I can't wait to have another one.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.